Rather you believe Jesus Christ was the divine Son of God who died for the sins of the world, or just a great preacher who taught us how to live. What isn't in doubt is that he was one of the greatest and most important and influential human beings to ever walk the earth. He's number one in my opinion. I have an opinion on the topic of who Christ was, but this isn't a video preaching to you. This is just a movie review. Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ is often considered the best Jesus movie ever made. Personally, it's number 2 for me, but I will say it's the best historically accurate Jesus movie. It was, pun intended, a passion project from Mel Gibson, who was one of the biggest movie stars in Hollywood at the time. And he was a flawed, yet devout Catholic, who saw that Jesus was rarely portrayed right in countless films. And he wanted to do the job right for once. It became a huge hit, becoming at the time the highest grossing R-rated film ever made. But it was far from a guaranteed hit. This wasn't the 50s when biblical epics like the Ten Commandments and Ben-Hur were both critical and commercial smashes. Or even the slightly more secular 70s where the miniseries Jesus of Nazareth was a rating smash. This was the early 2000s when the so-called new atheist fad was popular, and we had to hear from pompous blowhards like Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, and Christopher Hitchens talking about how stupid Christians were. A religious film in a very secular time was not at all a guaranteed hit. Here we had a long film that moved at a slow, deliberate pace, had a lot of political intrigue, and spoke in a language almost none of the viewers spoke. And it had graphic gore, which caused it to be rated R, instead of a more family-friendly rating, which limited its reach. Gibson wanted to make the film as historically accurate as possible, and to do that you had to show all the suffering of Christ. In most films you just see Jesus on the cross. Here we see Jesus literally tortured and beaten to near death before he even goes near the cross. Crucifixion is bad enough. You basically drown without water, and it often takes days of lingering suffering before you finally mercifully die. And to make things even more complicated, the film was spoken in Aramaic, because it was the actual language used in real life. So not only did you have a long movie, but you had to see the Lord be tortured mercilessly, and if you had to read subtitles, or you couldn't understand what was going on. And yet the film set the world on fire. There was a brief but powerful revival of people converting to the faith or returning to the faith after falling away. And every time I saw the film, I was always the only one who wasn't shedding a tear. The acting in the film is terrific. Jim Caviezel, to me, gives the best performance of Christ ever filmed. He comes off both as a man with quiet dignity and a man who shows tenderness at the same time. And Monica Bellucci, besides just being a beautiful woman, is also a great Mary Magdalene. You also see great performances from Christ's mother and a very androgynous-looking Satan, who has a great low-key menace. Seriously, the scene where Satan torments Judas with his guilt and shows him haunted visions, that would fit in perfectly in any horror film. It's a hard trick because in this film you're being shown the end of a story rather than at the beginning, so you don't know the characters. So their performances, nonetheless, bring the characters to life, and you feel like you know people you just met, and I really like the gritty style of the film. It makes it look more realistic. Of course there's always controversy. It seems every Jesus movie gets accusations, usually false, of anti-Semitism. It wasn't helped when a drunken Gibson went on an anti-Semitic rant when he was pulled over for a DUI. He apologized profusely once he sobered up. And no, I don't think there's anything anti-Semitic about the film. I think the critics were just using their typical Hollywood anti-Christian bias against the film. Many criticized the graphic violence as well, some even calling it torture porn. But once again, this is a movie that tried to tell the story as it really happened, and the sad truth is, everything he endured really happened, and it made the film so much more powerful. And besides, the film was rated R, and the R rating was entirely because of the violence. If you don't like violence, don't watch the film. All that being said, it's a historical fact that a man named Jesus of Nazareth preached in what is now modern-day Israel and died on a cross. That is beyond dispute. What you think that event meant is a matter of faith. You must decide that for yourself. I watched this film the first time with my devout Christian grandma. I watched along with her and read the subtitles to her. She's gone now, so this video is dedicated to her. When I decided to